You're all very welcome to Technological University Dublin, and thank you to TU Dublin for the use of the hall. I'm Keith Moynes, I'm Assistant Secretary in the Department of Further and Higher Education, Research, Innovation and Science. This is a really exciting day for us in the department and the HEA, and I know across the system and the stakeholder groups, the launch of the National Access Plan. There's been a huge amount of consultation to develop this plan, including many of the people in this room, and we just want to thank you for all the engagement. Your engagement, the sort of the contribution, the intellectual heft, and the ambition that you've brought to us has really shaped the plan, so we want to thank you for that. Before we actually launch the plan, the first thing we wanted to do is to hear some of the voices of learners who've been, whose lives have been improved by access to higher education. So there's a video where we're going to hear from some people whose lives have just been, taken that different turn into positivity because of the supports that have been provided through access and through the support of the higher education system. So we'll start with that video. It's really, really inspiring stuff, and thanks to Patrick, Jonas, Kaylee, Alpha, Danielle and Diana for sharing their stories and reminding us, if we needed to be reminded, why we're here and why this is important. I can attest that from day one of the establishment of the department, that one of the Minister's top priorities has been getting this plan, getting inclusion high up on the agenda, and setting a high level of ambition for us as a department, as a sector and as a society. So it's really brilliant to be able to welcome the Minister for Further and Higher Education, Research and Innovation Science, Simon Harris, TD. Minister.
Well, I didn't know I was going to follow that video because there's really not a lot left to say. That was really powerful, really, really powerful. And I think if any of us needed a reminding as to why today matters, as to why today is important, as to why today we're coming together in TU Dublin to say we're proud of all we've achieved together, but we want to do a hell of a lot more. I think that video encapsulates, personifies and put words on it in a way that nobody else can. And thank you to everybody for being here today. Thank you to Technological University Dublin for hosting us here today, and I think it's so right and proper that they are hosting us, because this is an institution that I know since its very foundation has been committed to access, to equality of opportunity, to equity of access, and I thank them for that. This is phrases like landmark days and all that, they kind of get hackneyed and destroyed by politicians. I think this actually is one though, I really do. I think this is a really, really powerful day. And why do I think that? I think it because if we look back at all of the national access plans we've had since 2005, and we've had 3 before, each plan has led to real change and real opportunity. Objectively, over the last 2 decades, we have seen so many opportunities for people in our country that simply weren't there before. If we look at any figure, any metric, we have seen real progress. But we also know that that hasn't been enough and that we need to do more. And before I get into that, I really want to thank so many people who have worked so intensively on this issue over the last number of years. I want to thank Keith Moynes, the Assistant Secretary in the department, and I want to thank all his team for their huge leadership. Anne Gorman, Eilish Bergen, Bernie Madden, Karen Donoghue in the department, all their colleagues in the HEA, led by Dr. Alan Wall, Caitríona Ryan, Denise Frawley, Neil McDermott, Aileen Marin, Kate Weedy, Oisin Coppinger, and everybody whose name I haven't been told who worked so hard behind this plan. I know this has been for you a labour of love, but a huge amount of work to get to this point. So you can't just define economic disadvantage based on postcode. You have to actually define it on postcode, but also on circumstance. So yes, you can be disadvantaged based on where you're from, but you can also be disadvantaged by a whole variety of circumstance. And I think by challenging ourselves to broaden that definition and to call out new priority groups, new areas for focus, I think that is a level of ambition that we need. Similarly, I think when it comes to disability, an area I feel very passionate about, we've again made a lot of progress. We see it in the video, we see it in the room, we see it right across higher education institutions. But again, we haven't even measured all disabilities in the past. We've been silent on intellectual disabilities. We've been silent on autistic students. So again, what we're trying to do in this plan is say, well, we know when we put a relentless focus, it matters. We know it opens up opportunities. Now let's put ourselves under a bit of pressure to try and make that same level of progress for people with an intellectual disability, for people with autism, and let's put a bit of money behind it to make sure we can turn that into a reality. That in Irish colleges today, for every 5 students from a disadvantaged area, there are 10 students from an affluent area. So when ministers like I rightly say, isn't it great, we've 66% of people leaving school and going to college, that's not 66% across the board. That level of progress hasn't been equal. And that's what brings us to this plan. A vision, a funding stream, and concrete actions to take us up a few gears to where we need to be in terms of an inclusive education system. So what are we saying today? What we're saying today is over the next 7 years, the department, the HEA, colleagues right across the higher education institutions will put that unrelenting focus on supporting students who are socially disadvantaged, students who are members of the Irish Traveller and Roma communities, and students with disabilities, including intellectual disabilities. We're naming students, and I want to just major on this for a moment, we're naming students who've experienced the care system as a priority group for the first time ever. And you're going to hear from Rory shortly. Rory is not in my eye line, but Rory's here. You're going to hear from Rory in a few moments.
Good morning, Minister, officials, ladies and gentlemen, and distinguished guests. My name is Rory Brown, and I'm here today with EPIC, Empowering People in Care Ireland, as a member of their youth council, but also as a care experienced young person who spent 11 years growing up in the care of the state, being placed with a foster family along with my brother, while my 2 sisters grew up in another foster family. Throughout the 11 years, myself and my brother were lucky to have been placed with the same family while growing up, which allowed us to become part of the family. It also allowed us to focus on making friends, joining club, and most importantly, allowed us to focus on a primary and secondary school education. This ability to focus on my education from a young age allowed me to get where I am today, which is a qualified primary school teacher from Mary Immaculate College. It was not easy getting here, as I had to face many hurdles and climb each one, sometimes alone, to get to this point. I had to apply to Susie to check if I was entitled to a grant. I had never done this before, and I remember sitting in my room after my 18th birthday looking at the form and trying to fill it out. And it was one of the most difficult things I had to do. Not because of the layout, but because the first question on the form was what my home address was. For years, I believed it was where I'd grown up with my foster family. But after turning 18, I had a chat with my foster parents about becoming an adult and how now I would be in receipt of an aftercare allowance, and therefore they would not be getting paid to have me in the house anymore. It meant I had to decide to pay rent to them or leave the house that I'd grown up in for years while trying to complete my Leaving Cert. But luckily Susie has been ahead of the game when it comes to supporting care leavers financially with an independent section dedicated to us that allowed me to have the financial security to access education. As a care leaver, I was only beginning to see the hurdles that stood between me and higher education, and at times it was difficult. It felt like I had no one to help, that I had no support. I think the lowest of these times was 2 days before I started Mary Immaculate College. It was the end of August and I had just gotten my results of my Leaving Certificate. Of course I was happy, I'd gotten my course, and I celebrated like all my peers that night. But I do remember I never truly enjoyed it because of the overwhelming thoughts in my head. Up to this point, I didn't even have accommodation. I had tried all summer to find somewhere to live, in between working 40 plus hours a week to ensure I had enough money to survive in college. During results night, I spent evening thinking about where I was going to live. I knew I had to move out of the foster family's house as we agreed on that, but in my head I knew I didn't have a place to go. And so I remember 2 days before starting college, I got a train to Limerick on my own to try find a house. It was one of the loneliest experiences I've ever had, sitting on that train wondering what I was going to do. I'd spent the summer listening to my friends telling me that they found lovely places with their parents, but unfortunately care leavers don't have that experience. Luckily, I'm starting to see this change in the system to help care leavers overcome some of these challenges, with today being a particularly welcoming day, seeing care leavers named as a priority group in this new National Access Plan for the very first time. The importance of this cannot be underestimated, because it will hopefully ensure that care leavers of the future don't need luck to get through higher education. I hope it means care leavers won't have to go through the same challenges I faced, but instead will have the support and guidance to get them into and through higher education. And as an educator myself, I'm excited for that to happen. To see the barriers that many of us face slowly being broken down is something that myself, the EPIC Youth Council and EPIC staff have worked on for years. As we work towards having care leavers included in the new National Access Plan last year and this year, we were delighted that the Department for Higher Education and the HEA were so receptive to hearing from us, and that Minister Harris specifically took time to meet us and show us how important it was to him that care leavers were recognised as included in this plan. We feel that the new National Access Plan is an opportunity for children in care to be prioritised for the support they deserve as they leave school, transition to adulthood and enter university. And we believe this plan will play a role in ensuring young care leavers go on to live happy, healthy and successful lives. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Rory. I think that says it all. I think that says it better than I can say it. Do I say one thing? The National Access Plan does talk about the importance of teachers as role models. And I think we're very lucky, and your students are very lucky to have you as that sort of role model. So well done, and thank you for sharing that fantastic story. As the Minister said, this was a really collaborative effort between a lot of people in this room, but a huge amount of the work was driven by the Higher Education Authority. And the team in the Higher Education Authority, both on the access side and the statistics side. So we want to invite Caitríona Ryan, Head of Access at the Higher Education Authority, to say a few words. Caitríona.
Everything we do in the implementation of this plan needs to place the students at the very centre, and every action needs to be thought of in the context of what is the impact for the student? How will this action make things better for the students? And I think hence we have our 6 goals in the plan, which are all centred on the deliverables and the outcomes for the student. We welcome the announcement of the multi-annual and dedicated fund to increase Traveller and Roma participation in higher education, and we will be engaging with stakeholders on the allocation of that funding in the next few weeks. We are also working on the allocation regarding the additional funding supports to support higher education institutions build those links with the newly established DESH schools and enhance their links with further education providers. Over the course of the last National Access Plan, the HEA has worked to significantly expand our datasets in relation to the socio-economic profile of the higher education student population, and this is now reflected in the Deprivation Index score data. This data gives us a profile of the relative affluence and disadvantage of the student population that is really second to none, and it includes undergraduate students, postgraduate students, part-time students, full-time students, and allows for a really rich and rigorous in-depth analysis. This data has provided the evidence base to build in more national targets and key performance indicators than have ever been included in any previous National Access Plan. But we look forward to building and developing on this further over the course of the plan, because it is imperative that actions reflect an objective and thorough evidence base, and that we have robust means to evaluate and measure performance. There's so much more we could say about the new plan, but I think I'm going to stop there and give everyone some time and space to digest it. Thank you for listening.
Thanks, Caitríona, and thank you for your leadership in this area, and thanks to all the colleagues in the HEA for really sterling work. The Minister mentioned in his remarks the focus on Traveller and Roma people in this plan, and it's an area that we know we need to get better at. It's an area where we need to have ambition. And one of the key things, we keep talking about, the collaborative approach to developing this plan. One of the key pieces of work that we undertook was a sharing of experience event focused on the traveller community. And one of the key people who helped inform that sharing of good practice events was our next speaker, Megan Berry. Megan is Traveller Outreach Officer in Maynooth University and also works with Pavee Point. So I'd like to invite Megan to come up and say a few words.
Thanks very much. Pavee Point welcomes the launch of the new National Access Plan and believes it's a critical response to support and progression and retention rates of travellers, Roma and other priority groups in higher education. Since its establishment, Pavee Point has been advocating for traveller and Roma rights in education and has called for special measures as well as the inclusion of travellers and Roma in the mainstream education measures. The Equity of Access Plan launched today with its targets and budget lines in relation to traveller and Roma is an example of such special measures. Travellers and Roma are significantly underrepresented in the higher education system, with many barriers in access and supports across the education, from early years to higher education. The importance of targeted measures, as in the previous National Access Plan, and recent funding to make them possible are critical in supporting and increasing Traveller and Roma participation at higher education. In addition to the targets to increase Traveller and Roma access to higher education in the new National Access Plan, we also welcome the action to improve evidence base in this area, the discussions to consider the appointment of a PAT coordinator in the further education and training sector to support further education, higher education transitions for priority groups with a particular focus on students from the Traveller and Roma communities. We also welcome the establishment of PAT 5, a 3-year pilot of $450,000 per year to support access, participation and success for Traveller students and Roma students. Whilst Pavee Point acknowledges the really positive commitments in the new National Access Plan, we understand that to increase Traveller and Roma participation at third level, we need targeted measures to address the issues impacting Traveller and Roma at early years, primary and particularly at second level education, where we're seeing high levels of early school leaving and low levels of progression. When I was in school, the thoughts of college for me were very far-fetched. Living in overcrowded circumstances and my previous experience of the education system didn't give me much hope. I know if it wasn't for the direct supports I had received in my last 2 years of secondary school and the sponsorship from the Sisters of Mercy, I wouldn't have had the opportunities to progress in education the way I did. My new Access programme played a significant role in supporting me on my journey and ensuring that any issues along the way didn't affect my education. Significant initiatives like the laptop loan schemes and the Student Assistance Fund saw me through the final years. The forging of connections between my work with Traveller support agencies and communities and third level institutions is key to ensuring that policies and practices are harmonised across the systems, sectors and organisations. My dual role also ensures that the voices of stakeholders, those most impacted by inequality in education, remains at the heart of all that we do. Pavee Point, with support from the HSC and from the new University Access Programme and the Department of Applied Social Studies, is currently involved in a pilot initiative which sees 8 travellers participating in the part-time in-service professional degree programme. We know that Travellers and Roma have education ambition and plenty of potential, which with the right support can be unlocked. Continued efforts, targeted measures and a review upwards of the targets being set in the new National Access Plan after 2 or 3 years will create better outcome and opportunities in terms of progression, participation in higher education. While recognising the challenges ahead in meeting the intended goals, we welcome the plan launched today and look forward to supporting the departments and all relevant stakeholders in the implementation and monitoring. Thank you.
Thanks, Megan, and thanks not just for sharing your own very inspirational story, but for also the policy imperatives that you've set, and we absolutely agree with, and we in the department will be working very closely with colleagues in the Department of Education and Department of Children to implement that programme for government commitment around the traveller education strategy. So thanks for raising that issue. We're drawing to a close here now. I want to thank my own colleagues in the department. I want to thank the colleagues from the HEA, colleagues from our communications team, particularly for drawing together the stories, colleagues who've been doing Irish Sign Language interpretation. We spent 18 months getting to this point where we have a national access plan of great ambition. That's the easy bit. But I know that as we move our focus on to implementation, I know the commitment, I know the passion that's shared across the system to deliver on the ambition that we have. This is the type of thing that I think many of us got into public service, got into education to do, and I know by working together we'll be able to do it. So thank you very much for coming today, and we look forward to working with you.